There's only three people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new t-shirt. It's your new t-shirt.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Hi there, very good evening to you. Aaron Armstrong here with your latest news headlines. And let's bring you up to date with what's been happening at the COVID inquiry today. Rishi Sunak argued against a second lockdown during the pandemic, and both he and Boris Johnson were in favour of letting coronavirus spread, even though people would die. At the inquiry, diary entries from former Chief Scientific Officer Sir Patrick Vallance revealed how Boris Johnson wanted to let the disease rip, while his most senior advisor, Dominic Cummings, suggested Rishi Sunak, then Chancellor, thought it was OK to let people die. Downing Street says the Prime Minister will set out his position when he gives evidence to the inquiry. In further revelation, Sir Patrick described Boris Johnson as weak and indecisive and clearly bamboozled by scientific detail.
Certainly when I left a meeting, I would usually be persuaded that we had got him to understand what it was we were trying to say. But as one of the extracts showed that you put up there, that 6 hours later he might not have remembered what was in that presentation.
Well, the Prime Minister's promised to cut taxes carefully and sustainably ahead of Wednesday's autumn statement. Rishi Sunak says the government can move into the next phase of fixing the economy now inflation's been halved, but says any tax cuts will be made carefully and sustainably.
We will do this in a serious, responsible way, based on fiscal rules to deliver sound money and alongside the independent forecasts of the Office of Budget Responsibility. And we can't do everything all at once. It will take discipline, and we need to prioritise. But over time, we can and we will cut taxes.
4 men have been convicted of murdering a woman who was shot at her home with a machine gun in Liverpool. Ashley Dale died after being found with a gunshot wound in her garden in August last year. The 28-year-old was killed when James Witham forced his way into her home and opened fire. Sean Zeiss, Niall Barry and Joseph Peers were also found guilty of her murder. The US President Joe Biden says he believes a deal to secure the release of some of the hostages being held by Hamas in Gaza is close to being agreed. Meanwhile, the US has condemned the seizure of a cargo ship in the Red Sea by Yemen's Houthi rebels and has demanded its return. The group, which claim the ship is linked to Israel, released footage showing armed men boarding and seizing the vessel. The ship, however, is Japanese-run and British-owned. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu claims it's an act of terrorism by Iran, which backs the Houthis. Iran has denied any involvement. The Israeli city of Tel Aviv has come under a huge Hamas rocket attack. More than 100 separate alerts sounded across the city earlier, stretching as far south as Ashdod. A number of the rockets fired from Gaza evaded the Iron Dome missile defence system, although no injuries have been reported. Israeli airstrikes in Gaza are continuing. The Hamas-run health ministry says one such attack on a hospital earlier killed at least 12 Palestinians. And former Manchester City defender Benjamin Mendy's launched a multi-million-pound claim against the club over unpaid wages. The 29-year-old, who left City over the summer, alleges he wasn't paid after being charged with rape and sexual assault in 2021. The France international was subsequently cleared of all charges. In August, the High Court heard Mendy was selling his house in a bid to avoid bankruptcy as he battles against an £800,000 tax bill from HMRC. Well, that's it for me for the moment. Now it's time for Headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, your first look at tomorrow's newspapers. I'm Simon Evans. Joining me tonight, Headliners answer to Zuckerberg and Musk. They couldn't afford the Colosseum, so they're battling out here tonight, Josh Howie and Nick Dixon.
I must be Musk, which is amazing.
I guess you are.
I'm Jewish.
I want to say. I just think because I'm so cool and based.
Because
I am a robot.
This beautifully coordinated look between the two of you tonight. I think that's the best I've ever seen. Yeah.
Haven't we all gone through a different tone of blue?
Kind of blue-green.
We're all proud to be British, but in different ways.
Feels very like a kind of high street, a bit of a Burton shop window from the glory years of the high street.
How dare you?
Top man, maybe. Anyway, let's have a look at those front pages. As promised, Guardian kick us off. UN sounds alarm as world on track for hellish 3-degree centigrade rise in temperatures. Heard that before. Telegraph, Sunak pins hopes on Thatcher tax package. The Sun has Putin tried to kill me 5 times. The Mirror, Sunak, let people die, from Patrick Vallant's diaries, not today's headline. And Times, WFH push to get more sick Britons off benefits. The Daily Star, finally back on the boffins. Boffins, it is OK to call a boffin a boffin. That's from a boffin. That's your front pages. So we will start with Tuesday's Telegraph, Josh.
Yes, we have a picture of Rishi Sunak there, and it looks like he's using a toy screwdriver to do some DIY. That does look like a sort of...
Or it may be one of those very powerful glues, I think, possibly.
OK, I didn't know you were such a specialist.
I think he might be doing some gluing, yeah. I think it's definitely a make-and-do session anyway, isn't it?
Well, they look like they're having a lot of fun.
Terrible anoraks. That's him and Hunt, Sunak Hunt.
Yeah, and their little sort of day trip actually doubled the manufacturing output of this country. So good for them. But the headline, of course, is Sunak pins hope on Thatcher tax package, which is the idea is that we will not be the most heavily taxed we've ever been since World War II. Might actually get some of our money that we earn.
That would be nice.
Would be good. Now that I am actually earning money.
Would that be a particularly favourable tax package to small business people, employers,
yes, businesses. So yeah, businesses and and tax cuts are coming for rich people, which is great through inheritance tax. Yeah, is one of the things and. They're talking about raising the 40% income tax threshold. So, again, people who are earning lots and lots of money.
I think that would make sense, given that there's been a huge amount of inflation. A 40% tax threshold is not what it used to be, is it?
Sure, exactly.
I think also the truth is that, you know, corporation tax really does stifle it. I mean, if you're going to get taxed into the ground just as soon as you try and come up with anything, it is a bit miserable.
Well, I mean, tax rebates for investment, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Because we're chronically underinvested in this country, and that money's been held back for years. Yeah. But what we're not really seeing is a lot, you know, it turns out they've got now like a 25 billion headway, windfall, whatever you want to call it. They've got some money to play with, basically, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be going necessarily to the people who might need it the most.
Earn it. That's the point. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, well, apparently he's trying to catch himself as the ideological heir to Thatcher, which is not very convincing. It might be in terms of policy, certainly not in terms of persona. But at least he's doing things like, cutting national insurance, which everyone wants, reducing inheritance tax, which isn't just for rich people, it affects loads of people, it's a horrible tax, income tax thresholds, which is important because of inflation, obviously putting, as you say, more people into that bracket. Yeah. It's not an election winner, really, to talk about fiscal drag and thresholds, because people want really more sort of headline-grabbing tax cuts. So that's his problem with the whole Rishi programme. It's a good programme for if you've got 8 years in government and you're saying, like, we're taking it very steady, we've halved inflation, now we're doing this, but is it enough to get him elected? And I've listened to the Dominic Cummings interview, he just did that 2.5-hour podcast interview, and he talks about Sunak. He says he was really smart, really hard-working, and less interested in the theatre of politics and all the photo ops, although ironically he's now doing one, because the other thing he says is, but he's still in a system where you get caught doing all this nonsense and you can't affect real change. So that's, so it's kind of appropriate that he's there with Hunt doing some pointless...
I always felt that way about him, and I just don't think he is cut out to be Prime Minister, to be honest. I think he'd be a very good number 2 to almost...
An operations guy.
Thatcher or whatever, but he just doesn't have an appetite for that.
As you say, he's presenting himself as the change candidate, and it's like, come on, after 13 years, that is not the way to do it.
No, that is true. Anything else off that front page, or should we proceed on to the Mirror?
There is something coming up about red wine. Stick around to the end, everybody.
Nick, we have we also have another story later on about our colleague Nigel, but in the meantime, let people die.
Yes, Sunak let people die. A very unfair headline, of course, from the Mirror here, and it comes from the man I was just talking about, actually. Dominic Cummings was quoted by Sir Patrick Vallance as saying that Sunak just is prepared to just let people die, which of course he won't have said and is obviously ludicrously unfair, but it would have just been a kind of Cummings-esque characterisation. He's quite colourful with his language, as we know. And it was things like eat out to help out, which has been heavily criticised. I liked Eat Out to Help Out. I thought it showed that Sunak cared about business people, he cared about hospitality, he was doing his best. And we also learned from this, of course, that Boris Johnson was weak and indecisive, which won't exactly be a shocker, that he didn't understand graphs, who'd have thought. And there's one terrible moment where Boris just says, where bleep, he says a swear word, we are too bleep to get our act together, maybe we're licked as a species. What an awful thing for the leader of the country during a crisis to say, maybe we're just...
Guys, let's just give up.
The whole species is over. What terrible leadership.
I suppose the question is the tone of voice he said that in. He was
head in hands, apparently.
Well, maybe in which case not great. But if he'd been sort of goading people, or maybe we're just licked.
No.
Should we just give up?
Done in a kind of no, it wasn't that. That could have been that, but it wasn't that.
No, okay.
Do you know what? I read this and thought I genuinely would have been a better leader in this time than Boris Johnson, because I wouldn't have done that.
I don't know. A lot of the stuff. I haven't really read this. A lot of the stuff that's come out of these. I quite often think Johnson has a point here. To be honest, I think his gut instincts were.
But he didn't follow his gut instincts.
No,
he was weak.
That's right. He was weak in that. Well, he was the trolley, wasn't he? That's what Cummings called him.
Yeah,
the three-wheel trolley.
Stuff that upsets me here is, supposedly Sunak said that it was more important to control the scientists than COVID.
Yeah.
And this whole thing about there was no... This is Sir Patrick who gave his testimony today, saying that Vallance said that there was no scientific evidence for the rule of 6. Now, that rule of 6 stuff, that dominated for a while, and it seemed so arbitrary. And now
6 feet.
6 feet for the 6 people.
Right.
All of these
nonsense.
Yeah, and it's like, again, just how worthy people are, how you had people... We went out to a friend's house for like a barbecue with 7 people and neighbours are complaining.
I suppose the thing is, psychologically, but this is... Because I do very much agree with that, really, but as a devil's advocate, I suppose psychologically you can't have the government going, about 6 people, that'd be ideal, because nobody will follow it at all. You have to say to them, listen, we've worked it out, it's 6 people. It's probably,
But when they hadn't worked it out at all, though.
Or you don't do any of it. You don't lock people in their homes.
Well, that's where I would have gone with, absolutely.
Even the 6 metres, or the 2 metres, that was based on the droplets argument, which Dr. Claire Craig has debunked. You can check out my podcast with it. If it's an aerosol, disease, that doesn't work anyway. So none of it worked. And even there, it being rule of 6, even some people will still make the case for the masks and the droplets and things, but no one's making the case for rule of 6.
I agree. The Times, Josh.
Yes, now we have Lord Cameron, a picture of him there. And yes, the WFH push to get more sick Britons off benefits. This is part of what we were just talking about with the upcoming autumn statement. And yeah, it's certain things that they've taken off, which are now they were talking about if you're incontinent, that you would still have to go to work, but that's lucky for me. But yeah, now basically there are a lot of people, 1 in 7 I think is, on claiming incapacity benefits based on mental health.
Right.
And now they're basically saying that you got to be proper mental.
Yeah.
To claim, like here, as they say, active
stigma.
psychotic illness. Yes. Is what you have to suffer from, not just be like, oh, I'm a bit down today.
It's the accepting of the subjective self-analysis has become the sort of the trend across a whole raft of social problems, isn't it? In the last few years.
But they're calling this a carrot and stick approach. I'm only seeing the stick part because
it's a stick and a carrot that's painted like a stick. A stick that's made like a
okay, I see. That's clever.
2 sticks.
Clever. Because they're saying that the existing claimants will be given a guarantee they'll not have their right to benefits assessed if they look for work. But as far as I know, that's always been the case. If you prove you're looking for work, I mean, that's always been the case. So, not sure what that's about. They'll be told to make work pay, but the government kind of has to also do that. It doesn't really work on an individual basis. But Rishi does say the benefit system's not sustainable. Everyone knows that, but no one's ever managed to crack this kind of Byzantine system. It's so complicated and wasteful. And they don't mention immigration, which, by the way, is not helping.
Well, there are so many things that aren't sustainable at the moment, but they've added that one quite recently. I suppose lots of things haven't been sustainable for decades, have they? But I mean, it was a foreseeable outcome of their policy during COVID that once you got people into the habit of working from home, they would be disinclined to get back to work.
Although there could be a silver lining is that people's who are sort of staying in their home and say, I can't go to work. Well, there are now these job opportunities where, well, you could actually have a job over Zoom if a lot of people aren't working. That excuse doesn't hold up necessarily. But when you have half of people who are on claiming benefits actually having a job, that's also the problem as well. They're not getting paid enough.
That's true. And Nick, just very quickly with the boffins.
Yeah, it's Daily Star boffins. It is OK to call a boffin, but only if the boffins are on a pub quiz team called something like the Brilliant Boffins, and the boffins really don't mind being called boffins.
That's good. That's good to know. Excellent.
Yeah, and
is that an actual boffin on the front?
He looks like a crack addict.
Yeah, I don't think that's a boffin.
That's a real boffin.
I think he's an actor. Which is, they need to find real boffins. Stop erasing boffins. Let's take a break. That's it for part 1. Coming up, we have Islamophobic attacks on Hindu prime ministers, global warming, it's my fault, and why I'm emigrating to Argentina. Clue in the question. See you in a couple of minutes. Thank you.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GBNews.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only three people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliner. So Josh will kick off with The Independent now. Further evidence that left-wing politics is devolving into squabbling inter-ethnic special interest groups.
Quite. Labour MP blasts Keir Starmer's Sunak attack ads for being Islamophobic. So this, we are talking about Zara Sultana, and she is talking about the ads that I think they were April this year, where it was basically saying that that highlighting that number of adults convicted of sexually assaulting children under 16 who didn't go to prison, which is. There we go, there it is there. Wow. And with a picture of our Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. Now, she is the one making the connection in her mind and saying that that is a sort of a diss or a trope of all Asian men.
Yeah.
But that isn't... It's a reach.
So is she referencing? She's talking.
Yeah.
Is it what the grooming gangs?
She's talking about the grooming gangs and stuff. But I don't think there are any Indian men.
No, for a start, Sunak is Hindu, so that's that's the most grotesque.
Yeah.
I mean, that's worse than racism, really, isn't it?
Well, she's making
what I would call that. Exactly.
Well, we'd have, and this, by the way, this is coming from somebody who. This is a podcast that she did for Novara Media, where she's claiming that Labour is now Islamophobic and whatnot. Islamophobic is a made-up word from the 1970s from Iran.
So you think
there's no Christianophobia.
Gaza?
Yeah, this is absolutely part of it.
Yeah.
And by the way, and we're talking about somebody who has written herself. Tweet saying how she'd celebrate the death of Blair and Netanyahu, how that she referred to as Jewish student as a whitey, which is a derogatory term for a white person, and backed violent resistance from Palestinians and said that's legitimate. I mean, it's the hypocrisy.
Nick, it does seem, doesn't it, that there is a worrying, grip, let's say, that Islamic pressure groups, Islamic interests have on the Labour Party now.
Absolutely. I mean, and then Josh almost said the word that I thought the word projecting, which is what it seemed like she was doing. No one thought this was racial. It was a tasteless ad, but it didn't seem like Islamophobic. Certainly didn't seem racial. So it's identity politics trumping party, and of course the far left don't like Starmer anyway. And now there's the tension with Israel and all that. So it's a breakdown in the Labour Party. And she says this interesting quote. She says, "We need to look at how treating all people fairly. I think we're seriously lacking in that area," which is true, but not for the reason she thinks. I mean, the problem Labour has is with anti-Semitism and now with Israel and in this conflict. So she has a sort of completely, to me, but has it completely backwards.
I agree.
And also Starmer did that he did that Islamophobia Awareness Month recently. So he's actually bending over backwards to accommodate Muslims in the party.
Can I say one more thing, just to add to what you're saying here? She's saying that someone went along, like some sort of Labour Party official said, that the strategist said that they're hemorrhaging Muslim voters because of Shakir's work tackling anti-Semitism. Now, why would tackling anti-Semitism lead to hemorrhaging of Muslim voters? Because there is a problem in Islam with anti-Semitism.
It is perceived to be a zero-sum game, isn't it? That's the reality. Yeah. And it's a terrible reality that we're all confronting, I think, for the first time, it's flared up. No, fair enough. Over to The Guardian now, Nick, and to no one's great surprise, the middle classes of Great Britain are responsible for another bad thing.
Yes, reveal the huge climate impact of the middle classes. So it's the world's richest 10%, and you think, oh, well, I don't care about them. But it turns out to be people who earn more than $32,000 a year, so it affects me, Josh, less so. But it's so it turns out to be us, sort of like lots of people just in the West and so on, who are causing all the climate problems, not just the 1%. So anyway, but of course they are. I mean, this is not surprising in any way, obviously, that you have more emissions if you have more stuff and you're not sort of on
the other hand, we do get rid of our rubbish more conscientiously.
Right, I'd like to see the crime stats. What about tax? I mean, they're paying all the tax, these people, as well. So,
most of the terrible river pollution, most of the great plastic rafts floating out into the ocean come from poorer countries.
Yes.
Whereas we, have Argos.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone has
We contribute in our own way.
Yes,
it's car use and all the obvious things, but the only reasonable point in here is that sometimes there can be these taxes that are so generic they hit everyone equally. And this was the gilets jaunes, the yellow vests. They're in rural areas having to use cars and they get penalised. So there is something in there about needing more accurate taxes or progressive taxes. This guy talks about a tax for people who have 100 million in net assets, and I'd be fine with that because mine are only 90 million. So I'd be totally
well, it's
fine.
not that. If you give people a heads up that it's coming, I think a wealth tax is kind of fair. The problem with it is that people have made certain investment decisions, for decades on the understanding that doesn't exist, and it would be harsh.
Well, he's talking about a 1.5% on people who earn 100 million or more.
In
assets. Yeah, sorry.
Assets, yeah.
Which is 0.001% of the population.
Yeah.
And it would raise 300 billion, which would basically pay for the growing impact of the climate crisis. So it doesn't seem like a crazy thing.
No.
But it is an interesting thing. So they're talking about emissions inequality, and everyone always talks about the developed world and the developing world and whatnot. It is an interesting way of reframing it, but at the same time, let's not lose sight of the fact that the real, we can do what we want here in the UK.
China and India, of course it is. I do remember, though, some years ago when we moved down to Brighton, being aware that Brighton was terribly pleased with itself and proud of itself because it had a Green MP and so on, but simply because it was an affluent southern eastern town, its per capita energy usage was vastly in excess of even of that of a perfectly normal town in northern Britain, let alone, a developing country.
And we need to look at individuals. I don't own a car and I haven't flown since 2017, so my footprint is barely there.
You're like one of those Chinese
I'm levitating above the
19th
ground.
Century. Over to the Telegraph, some pretty grim reading for anyone who thought they might have been making a difference with a charitable donation.
Yes, hospital fundraisers only gave 10% of donations to the NHS. This is one charity, it's called Hospitals Charity, very brilliantly named. We're talking about, they raised 200...
It doesn't do what it says on the tin.
So
you had one job.
They raised 220 grand, so we're not talking, we're not talking Captain walk around the garden.
Sure,
money,
billions,
whatever. So but only 22,000 of it actually went to equipment, which is what it's meant to do. I saw a really interesting documentary on HBO called Telemarketers, where they have this big scam in America where they're raising money for police associations, and it's kind of like a protection scam because you get a sticker which you think is going to get the police there quickly. But it turned out, again, they were only getting about 10% to these these police widows and whatnot, if that. But for them, it was worth it because that 10% was still going to be greater than anything they would have got by themselves.
I mean, it may be...
I'm not saying this is good, but...
I don't know. I mean, it's probably not the worst kind of job you can have for all those people who sort of, the chuggers in the high street and so on. I will say one thing, though, that has been... It's boiled my goat for a long time now, the people who sort of go skydiving and want you to pay for, I'm doing sky...
which is basically what this... that's what they spent all the money on, was skydiving,
You want to skydive? Pay for your skydiving.
Someone at the store came up to, when we got paid, when you get paid, you get paid cash at the end. And the guy came up to me with the clipboard and he said, "Oh, I'm doing the marathon next week. Would you sponsor me?"
Yeah.
And you're standing there with a couple hundred quid from your weekend, you got to be like,
no.
And just to be clear, for the viewer at home, you mean the Comedy Store, because I think you just hang around the shop and.
Sorry, the Comedy Store.
Another one was people who want to cycle across Cuba, sponsored cycle. I mean, that would be the holiday of a lifetime. You're asking me to. iNews now, Nick, the man they are calling Argentina's Trump, although most people think he's more like a cross between Gareth Edwards and Bernard Manning, I think.
Well, that's your claim, yes. No, we love this. It's Argentina's Trump, loves Margaret Thatcher but wants Falklands back, so no one's perfect on the last part. But this is, of course, Javier Milei, very exciting, crazy guy, very interesting. BBC have already called him far right, so you know he's a good guy.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous from the BBC. If anything, he's far down the compass because he's a libertarian. So, they're trying to...
He's far right in the traditional old-fashioned economic sense, in that he wants to absolutely shrink
but that's
the state.
down on the compass. Not right.
No,
that's
he's economic as well. He's left-wing on the... he is left. He's not just... He is libertarian, but he wants to shrink the state and minimise tax burden, definitely.
But
which I think is the left-right distinction.
No.
He's
it's
not
authoritarian versus
anyway,
libertarian, which is... Anyway, never mind.
Okay,
no one at home will have understood that. The point... He does have some social conservative policies, though, like he's fairly against abortion. But he's in there now, and he wants to tackle things like the absurd 140% inflation. He obviously hates socialists. He gets the culture war. There's these amazing videos I'm sure you've seen online of him going through all the departments they have, useless government departments, going afuera and getting rid of them all and throwing them off a whiteboard. One of them doesn't come off, and he goes afuera, even if you resist, because it doesn't come off the first time. It's my favourite clip ever. He's completely mental, but in a good way. And it's very interesting because he calls himself an anarcho-capitalist, and it's like, let's see if libertarianism, anarcho-capitalism actually works in Argentina.
They need to country.
They need to try what?
But it's to see if it works on their country.
Yeah. Because they need to try something because 140% inflation. So.
Yeah, and absolutely. They tried all the mad leftist things in Venezuela and so on, so I think it's only fair they try some mad rightist stuff.
Yeah, there's a clip of him being interviewed, and he's just talking about the fascism of the left, and he's just swearing, and he's just called them...
They kill you! They kill you!
I mean, he's hilarious. It's very funny. Supposedly, he's converted to Judaism.
How is he?
So already I like the guy.
He's very charismatic. It's funny, he has the capacity in a lot of clips to look mad and dated and with his weird mop of hair. And in other clips, he sometimes looks quite charismatic and cool and stuff. I think he's quite a kind of shape-shifting... I don't know, there's something about him that's quite...
Well, I want to read about him because, like you say, they're going to go straight away. He's right wing, and I've learned my lesson now. I'm going to be like, you know what? Just because the eye is going to say he's right wing, I might actually go and
find a proper biography, or at least half an hour on the History Channel.
He is eccentric. He claims to be an expert in tantric sex. The only thing I don't like about him is he wants the Falklands back, so he crosses the line there. But other than that, he seems pretty cool.
That's true. Josh, The Express, to close this section, a story for anyone with an irrational fear of dying in the chilly depths of the darkest, deepest oceans.
God, yes. I've got a family who are in the... actually, not the Royal Navy, the Australian Navy. But anyway, Royal Navy Trident submarine crew horror as 140 nearly die and plunged to danger zone. It's terrible. It's really hard life. I know from my cousin. He I say he spent years on submarines. And this was sort of covered a little bit yesterday when we found out about it. But yeah, a dial... failed. They were basically sinking and didn't know it into the crush depth, and then someone at the other end...
Is that what would have happened? It would have been
if it had continued as is, and then someone at the other end of the submarine, there was fortunately a second dial, and they went, oh, wait a minute, why is that going down? And they called it. Wow. Thank God they did. But we've got 4 submarines. This is our nuclear deterrent. 2 of them, I think, are out. Basically, it seems like we've only got 1 now.
This feels ever so slightly, I mean, it's a valid story, I'm sure, but it's ever so slightly possibly like...
give some more money to us.
Yeah, exactly, a bit of propaganda. Still, I wouldn't begrudge them an extra dial, would you, Nick?
No. I mean, obviously, shocking, apart from the people nearly dying, also how close we are to nuclear disaster. Again, Cummings was talking about how in the Cold War it was just luck that we didn't, America didn't accidentally let off a
number of examples, aren't there? Was it Command and Control is the book that has all of them detailed in? Extraordinary.
Some people say that nuclear nukes don't exist. Which would explain why we haven't let one off, but no, but that type of person.
Yes, I remember reading that as well. Try to remember who that is during the interval. That's part 2 done. In part 3, we have stifled schoolrooms, Stonewall still standing. Shakira settles with Spain. We'll see you soon.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquia, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you. My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. So Telegraph now, Nick, and the Batley Grammar School incident continues to work its chilling effect on classroom discussions.
Yeah, shocking. It's teachers self-censoring lessons for fear of offending Muslim pupils. 1 in 5 teachers are self-censoring following the Batley Grammar School controversy. So, and 55% say they would not use any images of the Prophet Muhammad, even in a class about Islamic art. This comes from a YouGov poll commissioned by Policy Exchange, the think tank. And Nadeem Zahawi has said the fact that the Batley Grammar School row and the guy is still in hiding is a national disgrace. And he's absolutely right. I mean, the guy is still in hiding at a secret location with a new identity, and that's all we'll do for you if you're in this situation. You won't be protected. His own head didn't protect him. He suspended him, and all you'll get
his
is
headmaster. Sorry, I thought his own head.
No, his own headmaster, and you will not be protected. We know we've got the 2-tier policing system. We certainly feel that way. So imagine, of course, teachers are scared.
And can I just say, you say 1 in 5 teachers say they are self-editing or self-suppressing, and that's bad, but maybe it doesn't sound like but you have to remember there's probably, I mean, it wouldn't be every teacher where it would come up. If you were teaching maths or science or whatever, it wouldn't matter. So presumably these are all the teachers where any sort of element of Islamic...
Yeah. And how many are self-censoring on that survey? So.
Yeah. No, I think, but they are, yes, of course, and they are, this is particularly amongst, but it rises to amongst art teachers in particular. But anyway, first of all, the 45% who are said they will use pictures of classes. They're not doing that anyway. No. But as everybody here, we are unanimous about, it's disgusting that this person is still in hiding. Yeah. And what should have happened is the moment any death threats came out or any community leader came forward to threat, those people should have been arrested and put into jail. We live in a civilised, liberal, democratic society.
Well, do you remember there was it was around the same time there was the child that had kicked a Quran or something, and his
an autistic kid, and the big press conference, and the police are there, and it's shameful. And then you saw the cinema protests and whatnot. Look. Do what you want to do. Live how you believe, how you want to believe, but don't force that on other people and what we can be taught or not. Yeah, because we don't have blasphemy laws.
Yeah, exactly. So it's an encroaching on our values, which are free expression by one religion. And it's not like Christianity as well, where it's had a sort of historically been tied to the country. So it's a different religion with its own values that contradict our values. Toby Young is also working on it with the Free Speech Union to try and get this put into law, because free speech has to be recognised in law in schools as a value. Otherwise, this will happen. De facto blasphemy laws, as you say.
But the point is, even if it's in law, teachers are going to self-censor because they're scared, because they are not being protected by our institutions, by the police.
Correct.
Telegraph. And we have news that Stonewall have yet to be completely demolished in academic circles as well.
Yeah, shocking. It's King's College London tells academics that backing Stonewall could boost careers. So they had this guidance distributed about inclusion and support, the usual nonsense. It said, you should include evidence about how you create an inclusive environment and, point out your equality, diversity, inclusion ambitions. And they've cited specifically groups like Athena Swan, which is some gender nonsense, and Stonewall. So, yeah, Stonewall are still in there. And it's no... by the way, King's College London was also given a gold award last year by Stonewall's Workplace Index Scheme. So it's giving each other fake awards. We know that Stonewall, from the BBC report, actually, from Stephen Nolan, is basically a pyramid scheme, the diversity table. And university is becoming a kind of pyramid scheme as well, so it makes sense that they're working together in that sense.
It's like the kind of medieval papacy or something, isn't it? Just all these kind of different sinecures being handed around. My daughter's at King's College London, so I have to be careful what I say about that particular institution.
Drop out immediately.
Start using
it is slightly worrying. I think Athena Swan is something to do with women's STEM women or something, academic network or something like that.
It's a gender equality organisation.
That's probably just trying to get more women working in science. That is probably nothing like as compromised as...
But none of the organisations that you can support to get a promotion are things like free speech or actually for needs of female staff and whatnot. And there's a quote here from somebody who works in financial mathematics. What on earth has financial mathematics got to do with Stonewall pushing trans ideology?
And
he says
or
they're
indeed
prioritising...
gay and lesbian. I suspect those people already probably have reasonably decent representation in those fields. I could be guessing, but I don't think it would be necessary to push it, would it?
Yeah, I was just going to say, this guy, Josh references Dr. John Armstrong, says they're prioritising a corporate view on social justice over academic excellence, and that puts it in a sentence. That's exactly
absolutely. Josh, independent now. Hips don't lie, but pop stars maybe bend the truth a little.
Very good. Shakira settles case with tax authorities in Spain for her kids in Barcelona. She supposedly owed them about 13 million quid, and she did a big statement where she's like, I had the best tax lawyers and everybody said we were going to win, but I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to pay them the 6 million.
Yeah, it's just getting boring now.
I want to live my life with my children without £6 million that I'm sure I would have had if I'd stuck it through.
I mean, this line here, throughout my career, I've always strived to do what's right and set a positive example for others.
Shakira.
And I just think if you're gonna come out with lines like that, you can't then follow it up and go, but to be honest, it's cheaper to...
But not on this occasion.
Yeah, exactly.
I was going to say hips don't lie, but they do evade. But you kind of already said that joke, annoyingly. But one thing, though, she says that... I actually sympathise. She says the tax authorities in Spain pursued a case against me. She's sort of talking about how they've just hounded her for years. She should move to Argentina with Milei and have libertarianism. Don't you think they probably do, like, they have pursued her a bit as well, maybe?
She might have owed them some tax.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's right. We don't know.
They probably kind of weigh up who to pursue, and I guess, 13 million is worth pursuing, isn't it? Yeah.
Right.
Mirror now, Nick. It looks like our esteemed colleague is going to single-handedly bring down ITV. This is like that Miller's Crossing.
Yeah.
Great film.
Yeah, Coen Brothers. I'll get that later, probably, what you mean. But, it's in the Mirror, and, of course, they're attacking Farage. They're saying, ITV, I'm a Celebrity, in chaos as show loses millions of viewers over Nigel Farage boycott, which is absurd. They later admit that it's probably just thousands, they say, and it's at least in part due to the decision of thousands of fans to boycott, maybe. The thing is, they're taking last year's views, where you had Matt Hancock in there, you had my mate Sean Walsh, you had Boy George. It was quite, good people, but this year, Farage is the only person worth watching. You've got, like, the Britney Spears' sister, so that's my take.
The famous person, for me, is Grace Dent, and I only really know her as a Twitter personality.
Yeah.
She's a sort of restaurant critic on newspaper.
Yeah, there's YouTubers.
And you've got the bloke from Hollyoaks, but,
This is a thing that happens, putting Farage to one side for a moment. There's a sort of thing, it's a bit like Big Brother and all these kind of shows. They start out with having some genuinely quite random names from the past. Tony Blackburn won the first series, I think. Yeah. The point was people whose careers have gone up and down, and now they're being sort of brought out of retirement for, the joke being that they still believe that they have celebrity status, even though their star has obviously risen and then fallen. Now, the whole thing is just swarmed by people you never heard of in the first place.
Well, I guess you're going to, after how many series? 20 series or whatever? I don't know.
Do you think
they're going to run out of celebrities or run out of old celebrities or whatnot. But yeah, this is ridiculous. The idea that thousands of people, and also they're going, the people online using a hashtag about what? No, there's probably valid reasons, and also people stream stuff now as well.
Yes, absolutely. They can watch it all in.
And I imagine that it will be successful, and I imagine that he will actually be very watchable, and people will tune in. I think once these clips starts going out of him doing whatever task that they're going to force him to do, I imagine that people will start going into it. It's such a ridiculous thing.
I have to say, it's not my favourite TV show, but I watched it a bit last night, partly out of loyalty to Nigel, partly because I had to write an article for Spiked about it. But he came over very well. He does.
He's a charming guy.
He's a great broadcaster, and he picked up all his stars or tokens or whatever it was, and a couple of the others didn't, and he was very genial and generous about it. I think a lot of his enemies are going to be absolutely spitting.
Well, that's why they don't want to watch it.
No. That's the third quarter. In the fourth and final round, smear tests that smear women, trans Roman emperors, and omerta ain't what it used to be. See you in a couple of minutes.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests, and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. For the final section, we have the Mail Now. Josh Killjoy feminists are upset at attempts to inject a bit of bawdy humour into smear test campaigns.
Oh, my God, it's amazing these stories still exist. Fury at cervical cancer campaign that replaces the word women with people, sexualises smear test by telling patients not to keep their legs crossed. This is in the Northwest. And they launched a campaign at Manchester Piccadilly Station. Northwest Cancer Research have done this, and they have basically they had some mannequin with legs open and said, "Hey, ladies."
No, the legs were crossed.
I say, "Oh yeah, open them up." Yeah, and that in
for
itself,
the doctor, open wide for the doctor.
So they didn't say ladies. They said, "Hey, people."
Yeah.
And then when it was questioned about it, they were like, they doubled down on it and they said, "Yeah, no, that was deliberate. We're trying to deal with as many cervical cases as possible or whatever." People who women. Yeah. And of course, then they said at the end, "Yeah, we're trying to help as many people as possible." They just couldn't even within their explanation, they wouldn't.
And the funny thing is, with the mannequins that they used with the bare legs, it was quite sort of sexy in a 60s way, as as a poster would go. Well, if you're a trans man, as in biologically female, but you're trans, those wouldn't appear to you anyway because you'd be wearing like a suit and some brogues. So they're obviously not directed at you.
You must see the genius of it. Whenever it's a male sort of testicular cancer campaign, it's always like, hey, lads, check your whatever, or words I can't say on here. So, of course, if they want men doing smear tests, it's going to be like laddish, because they're trying to get men to go and do female smear tests. That's what it's about.
All 10 trans...
Yeah, they're appealing to them, so they're using laddish humour because they know they're men.
I suppose the alternative, cynical point of view is to say that the whole thing is cooked up to get the campaign more publicity anyway. We're talking about it because it's been regarded as controversial.
No.
Perhaps it's all
That's 4D chess that I don't believe they...
No, they're not smart enough.
Telegraph now, and talking of 4D chess, a trans Roman emperor. I'm not sure that's the win they think it is when you read about it.
No, it's not. It's Roman emperor was trans, says museum. This is the North Hertfordshire Museum, who seem to be basically a load of wallies, and they're claiming that this... Elagabalus, something like that. Elagabalus, thank you, Simon.
Of course.
Proper education, comprehensive school over here. So, yeah... What was it? Elagabalus?
Elagabalus.
I don't know.
Whatever you
also
said.
known as Heliogabalus.
I'm recalling asterisks and obliques.
That's not really his name, but he took that name and was given that name because that was a god that he reintroduced, I think.
Exactly, I was going to say. Yeah. The point is, they're saying this person was trans because he identified as a woman and this kind of thing. But it turns out those rumours were spread by Cassius Dio, who served the emperor who usurped and killed this other emperor. So it was the worst possible insult you could give, was to imply someone was effeminate. And they're trying to own it as like, oh, it was trans. It's like, no, it was just his enemies insulting him.
Well, he did apparently distribute favours and is thought to have to male courtiers and is thought to have prostituted himself and so on. But this was I think he took to the throne at the age of 14 and he was assassinated at 18. He was widely regarded as the worst emperor ever.
Yeah, but it's funny. But so Keith Hoskins, Liberal Democrat councillor, he's like, he was most definitely preferred the she pronoun. It's like, because of this one source. So, but as you say, the ironic thing is here that it's really condemned this poor emperor to a lifetime of his worst enemies putting these rumours out about him. Also, arguably racist because he was Syrian, and that was partly why he was seen as less. So really, it's the opposite effect. It's homophobic and it's racist to call someone by the enemies. At the end of when I die, please don't eulogise me by the worst people who refer to me on Twitter.
Who would that be, as a matter of interest?
They'd be like, oh,
who are your enemies on Twitter?
They'll like biggest Trump
most of the Middle
East.
Don't dress me in green.
And by the way, did you know there was any Liberal Democrats called Keith? I was surprised at that. It's not a very lived-out name, is it, really?
Over to Italy, The Guardian now, Josh, and a Guardian is what a lot of prosecutors and judges are going to need, I suspect.
More than 200 people have been convicted in an Italian mafia maxi trial. They had a specially built courtroom with the Ndrangheta, and there's an apostrophe before Ndrangheta.
Yeah.
Don't ever miss the apostrophe. That's the one time. Ndrangheta. And and they basically had the monopoly of European cocaine. That's where Nick gets it from.
Not quite the monopoly, as we come on to in another story in a couple of minutes.
Oh, really? Okay, there's more out there. But they basically thought, let's just get everybody together. Let's do it all at once. 400 lawyers. And this is the first time they've also not just had people from the mafia itself, they've also had all the sort of white-collar people who surrounded all of that.
The mafia wear white collars. That's the one thing I remember from The Godfather, is just how extraordinarily handsome and beautifully dressed they all were.
Well, it's totally based on real life.
A few problems here. They call it a maxi trial, which is not a very masculine name. It reminds me of maxi pad. That bothered me a little bit for such a masculine trial.
Well, it drains a lot.
Also, good point. They
should have been called a trialissimo or something.
They hid in the most comical places, behind sliding staircases, hidden trapdoors, and manhole covers. It's like a cartoon. And some of the names I loved as well: the Wolf, Fatty, Sweetie, and Lamb Thigh.
Why Lamb Thigh? What do you think?
Yeah.
What would
imagine being called Lamb Thigh when you could have been the Wolf? You'd be gutted.
Lamb Thigh, presumably in Italian, that probably has a little bit more of a poetic.
But they concealed weapons in cemetery chapels, drugs transported in ambulances, they diverted water supplies. Basically, they're Hamas.
I like the way they do the dumping of dead puppies, dolphins or goats' heads on the doorstep.
Yeah, the dolphin,
They
that's the
probably all
worst.
have very specific meanings. He sleeps with the fishes, he sleeps with the aquatic mammals,
Yeah, right.
he sleeps in the kennel. It's just
they had to improve on the horse head, didn't they?
Yeah.
That's been so done. Like, stick a dolphin there, you won't know what it means.
But seriously, it does take a lot of courage to take these guys down because, I mean, joking aside, I remember I've seen, not seen with my own eyes, but you see these big mafia trials and then in the weeks and months afterwards, one by one, lawyers get picked off.
Get whacked.
Yeah. So
You'd rather whack
fingers
'em.
crossed. I guess that's why you want to do the maxi trial, right? Take them all.
I just want to say, based on what you said there, they are great guys.
Yeah.
All of them. Lamb Thigh, Sweetie, Wolfman, they're amazing.
Hey,
the Wolf, sorry, Fatty, top blokes.
For as long as I can remember, all I wanted to be
was a lamb thigh.
Finally, Nick, scientists, not finally actually, but the penultimate story, red wine.
Yes, red wine. So scientists finally discover why drinking red wine gives you a thumping headache, and it's to do with the antioxidant quercetin, perhaps, maybe the pronunciation. And it's, if you grow grapes with the clusters exposed, Simon, and I've always said this...
Don't get your clusters exposed.
I know, it's classic.
Not in the
schoolboy
Not
era.
in that Calabrian sun.
Yes, you get much higher levels of quercetin, and I don't know, I don't care about it. It's a non-story, but,
do you
like it?
Do you drink red wine?
Yeah, I don't. And
you don't drink red wine or don't drink
I don't drink red wine. I drink just straight liquor.
I love red wine. I'll tell you what, I have noticed the ones I like. I think that's maybe why I like them. Because you can sort of tell even as you're drinking it sometimes that wine is going to give you a headache.
You enjoy that?
No, I like the ones that don't. Yeah.
But that chemical has been linked to a reduced risk of heart disease, high cholesterol, cancer and high blood pressure, which is why the Mediterranean countries have those. But what it means is you're getting the headache, but you know you're saving your life.
It's because they die before they can get any of them because they drink so much.
Can you maybe get that? Is it? It's not tannin, is it? Is it something? Is it one of those?
Nick did try and produce antioxidant quercetin.
Maybe you can get that in something else, and then just when you want to drink.
But it also might mean they're going to get a cure because if this is the real thing, you can get some sort of enzyme that would break down the chemical.
There's already been a cure for a long time, which is developed by Professor Nutt. The drugs are, and he's developed an alternative chemical to alcohol that has all the same effects and also has an antidote. Got antidote with this bloody earpiece this evening. Anyway, on to our final story for the night. And that
He's been drinking a lot of red wine.
The Times, Josh. It seems you don't get a new with Typhoo.
Ooh, no.
This is monopoly on cocaine.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, OK. So, railway worker wrongly sacked for drinking cocaine tea. He had some issues, some tummy issues. He got this Inca tea into his system. They did a test. A little fact for anybody: my mother-in-law actually does those tests for the for the National Rail, for the people who work on the tracks and whatnot.
Right.
And if he'd come to me first, he could have slipped me some money and he would have got away with it. But and they basically said, "Oh, you got coke in your system," and he was like, "Oh no, I was just drinking tea." They have not given him any compensation because they said, "Well, you should have really checked out what was in the tea before you drank it."
I think that's really harsh, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it won't have been very much. He did say the tea did have an effect, but I mean, you don't go scouring the ingredients.
But it made him talk a lot of rubbish. Yeah, that's why I got really fired by his boss.
I do think that's harsh. I mean, hopefully
he said it aided his digestion, to be fair, so there was a medicinal aspect. Yeah. But a laboratory told him that drinking cocaine in tea does not make it legal. That is crucial to remember.
It's good to remember, everyone. Headliners fans. What it doesn't say is, they say he hasn't got any money. He did win his case, though, but it doesn't say if he's going to get his job back.
Yeah,
it's a bit sad.
Absolutely. So it's 7 years on. He's probably not up to speed with it by now, I should think. But anyway, I feel a bit bad for the guy, but there it is. Those are the rules, I guess.
Yeah. He probably is up to speed if he sticks it in his teeth.
That's always the one that the Tour de France guys go, "Oh, I've got the Nandrolone because I've been doing the Lemsip or whatever," isn't it? It's always in something else.
Or the dodgy beef the boxers had in Mexico, the Canelo's dodgy beef. It's the dodgy beef.
Show is nearly over. Let's take another quick look at Tuesday's front pages. To wrap up, we have The Guardian. UN sounds alarm as world on track for a hellish 3 degrees centigrade rise in temperatures. The Telegraph. Sunak pins hopes on Thatcher tax package. Sun. Putin has tried to kill me 5 times. That's Zelensky, I think. Mirror. Sunak let people die. Times. WFH push to get more sick Britons off benefits. And the Daily Star boffins say it is OK to call a boffin a boffin. Boffin news there from the Daily Star. That's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests, Josh Howie, Nick Dixon. I will be back tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Leo Kearse and Stephen Allen. If you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. Otherwise, thank you very much for your company. Sleep well. I'll see you again soon. Good night.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affects us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And a very, very good evening. Yes, it's 7 o'clock. It's Farage, but of course the big man, he's somewhere else. We know where he is. He's down under. We'll be talking about that later. But so much to get into this evening. Religion and politics in schools. Big, big topic to be getting ourselves into. The stalling of offshore wind. Is it blowing or is it not? And of course, we'll be looking at Farage, what went on yesterday, what he can look forward to throughout this week. Anyway, first up, it's the news with Aaron Armstrong.
Very good evening to you. It is 7 o'clock. Aaron Armstrong here in the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has promised tax cuts to boost economic growth and reward hard work ahead of Wednesday's autumn statement. He says the government can move into the next phase of fixing the economy now that inflation's been halved. But he says any tax cuts will be made carefully and sustainably. Rishi Sunak identified 5 long-term goals, which include reducing debt, building sustainable energy, supporting business and delivering world-class education.
So now that inflation is halved and our growth is stronger, meaning revenues are higher, we can begin the next phase and turn our attention to cutting tax. We will do this in a serious, responsible way, based on fiscal rules to deliver sound money and alongside the independent forecasts of the Office of Budget Responsibility. And we can't do everything all at once. It will take discipline, and we need to prioritise. But over time, we can and we will cut taxes.
Well, the Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, says people have been waiting far too long for tax cuts.
The cost of living crisis has really hit working families. They've had more of their money taken in taxes, the highest tax burden in 70 years, 25 tax rises just in this Parliament, inflation eating into wages as well, and higher mortgages and rents. So I want taxes on working people to be lower. But I would say to the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, you've had 13 years, we've got the highest tax burden in 70 years. This is too little and too late.
4 men have been convicted of murdering a woman who was shot with a machine gun in Liverpool. Ashley Dale died. She was found with a gunshot wound in her garden in August last year. The 28-year-old was killed when James Witham forced his way into her home and opened fire. Sean Zeiss, Niall Barry and Joseph Pearce were also found guilty of her murder. The Israeli city of Tel Aviv's come under a huge Hamas rocket attack. More than 100 separate alerts sounded across the city, stretching as far south as Ashdod. A number of the rockets fired from Gaza evaded Israel's Iron Dome defence system, although no injuries have been reported. The airstrikes from Israel continue in Gaza, though. Earlier, the Hamas-run health ministry said one such attack on a hospital resulted in at least 12 Palestinians being killed. The former Manchester City defender Benjamin Mendy's launched a multi-million-pound claim against the club over unpaid wages. The 29-year-old, who left City over the summer, alleges he wasn't paid after being charged with rape and sexual assault in 2021. The France international was cleared of all charges. In August, the High Court heard Mendy was selling his house in a bid to avoid bankruptcy as he battles against an £800,000 tax bill from HMRC. Well, that is it for the moment. We're on TV, on digital radio, and if you want us on your smart speaker, say play GB News. Now it's over to Richard.
Thank you, Aaron, and welcome to everybody. Yes, it's just after 7. It's Farage. He, of course, is away, so I'm standing in this evening and this week. Extraordinary scenes on the TV.